morning. First of all, fellow panelists, distinguished delegates, thank you very much for having me, and organizers, of course. Thank you very much for having me here and listen to the story of franchising for a company called NIIT. And I had thought that we would do it in a different manner, but as we were meeting before the panel session, our moderator, she laid down some rules. She said that I'll first answer all the questions that she has, and then everybody else will dispute answers to all those questions so that we can have something interesting happening. But I think there are a few questions which will be difficult to dispute. So I must say that up front, because if we are talking of building a great high-performance franchise channel, then there are a few laws which are extremely important. I don't know how many of you are familiar with NIIT, but 1981 is when we started, and the simple idea at that time was computers were a new technology, and there was this whole mass of humanity who had to be taken across the bridge to take advantage of computers. And personal computer was born in 1981, and that's when some of us thought that it may be an opportunity that if we stood on the bridge and collected a small toll from everyone, we could make a viable proposition and add value. And that's what led to NIIT Limited in 1981. Our first franchise partner, and I'll give you the rationale for that, came in 1986, 26th of September 1986 to be precise, was the first franchise partner that we signed. Now, over the last 33 years, as NIIT has touched about 36 million Indians and non-Indians. We operate in 80 countries outside of India now. We have built a very strong channel, and in that channel, I would say about 60% of this 35 odd million people would have been trained by what we call our business partner system. We stopped using the word franchise, and I'll again explain to you why we stopped doing that. We call it the business partner system. And therefore, today, when we look back at the past of NIIT and the journey of NIIT, we believe that the business partners played a very, very crucial and important role in the building of the organization. And to us, even today, we consider them as co-founders of NIIT, very much like any one of us who actually, in quotes, truly or theoretically or correctly co-founded the company. So that's the history of NIIT. NIIT today, as I said, operates with a revenue of about $1 billion if you take all the businesses, operates in 80 countries, has a number of lines of business, and in that, the business partner channel also plays a small role. So what I was told was that if I could describe the journey of franchising, and through that talk about some specific aspects of what does it make to build a great franchise performance company, then I would actually have most probably answered most of the questions. So the very first reason is why? Why did we decide that we need to have a franchise or a franchisee? And at that time, the word franchisee, whenever people referred to the word franchisee, you would refer to the word franchisee in the context of McDonald's or Burger King or big brands, which were typically distributing a combination of product and services. And for education, which is the business we were in, the word franchising somehow did not gel. And people felt that the word franchising may not be appropriate. So we asked ourselves, Why is it that we are looking at franchising? And I must make one honest confession. The very first time I came across franchising is when I read the Yellow Book of McDonald's. The Yellow Book of McDonald's, which has some principles of what franchising is all about. And the reason we said for our having a franchise partner could come from one of the following considerations. Are we looking for capital? In which case, are we running out of capital and therefore we need somebody to participate through capital, but we don't want to share the equity with him? Is the reason that we want to have our reach and presence felt in more places? Is it that we want a risk reduction of our business and to that extent want to pass on a part of the business risk to somebody? Or do we want more entrepreneurial talent in NIIT? And so the answer to that, after we did a lot of soul searching, was the last one. What we felt was the success of our business was an education center. And the center manager was the true entrepreneur. We could be sitting there and saying, yeah, we are the big entrepreneurs, but we were not. It is the center manager who's the real entrepreneur. And we felt that we needed more of such entrepreneurs to be part of our system. And that's what led to an important definition of a potential franchisee. All our franchisees are first-generation entrepreneurs. We made a principle that our franchisees will be first-generation entrepreneurs. And why first-generation entrepreneurs? I'll describe again to you in a few minutes. But an important part, because we wanted those who have a deep hunger for entrepreneurship, but do not have the sufficient wherewithal to launch a venture of their own, and can we therefore ignite those fires, ignite those, or kindle those fires in them, and make sure that we are able to create a successful win-win relationship. We are a very values-driven company because we believe that the only way you can carry the culture of the organization across to many, many people, and we knew we were in a distributed delivery system, which means the point of contact with the customer in a far-flung place called Cuttack will be by a person who will be representing NIIT without, in quotes, owning NIIT. How do we make sure that that person has an emotional ownership? So we said we must define some laws, and those are what we call our value systems. And our opening statement there is, we NIIT believe that our growth or success, I'll use success right now, we NIIT believe that our success is a derivative of the success of each one of us. And when we say each one of us, it includes the business partner. So the first law that we created was, we will create a franchise channel where our success will follow the success of our partner, in contrast to precede the success of our partner. And that became a part of our business rules. Question was, who do we define as our franchisee? I gave you one definition, first-generation entrepreneur. So is it any first-generation entrepreneur? No. So another rule of partnership which we learned very quickly is what I call the simple one rule of relationships or partnerships that we have used in NIIT. There is a physics of the partnership, there is a math of the partnership, and there is a chemistry of the partnership. The physics of the partnership is, I have something which you don't have, and you have something which I don't have. If we put together, we will both create success. In this particular case, I have something which I know how to run the education business. You have something which is, you have the entrepreneurial talent, and you understand that marketplace. If we put together, we'll create success. The second is math. We are going to make 100 rupees out of this venture. I'm going to keep X, you're going to keep Y. My only rule is I will take my Y after I give you your X, so that your X is looked after. The third is the chemistry. Physics and math are easy to understand, and I think all of us practice. If there is one experience which I want to write down over 35 years, which has worked the best for us, is the chemistry. Because physics and math can change with times. Chemistry is built in. And that is what creates the basic trust and respect for each other, which is what actually is the stability of our franchise system. We have had as large number as 2,000, and at this point of time are operating with about 650 of them. However, whether it is the 650 or the 1,350 who are no longer our franchisees, you can ask them and each of them would love NIIT. That's the stability of that chemical bond that gets created, which I think is a very, very important part of our system. I would very briefly touch on 7 stages of what I call building a franchise relationship. And I know that I have very able co-panelists who would have comments on this as well as their own insights on this. So the very first stage, and just so that there is a little bit of rhyming and all of us remember, the very first stage is what I call inspiration. The inspiration to create the franchise has to come out of the inspiration which helped you create the business. The inspiration which helped us create the business was, we one day decided that we would like every human being on Mother Earth to be IT literate. That's about 7-odd billion people. In 35 years, we have done only 35 million. Long way to go. But we wouldn't have reached 35 million if we had not built that stronger inspiration of 7 billion people. In that inspiration, it was, therefore, we should be available to everybody to become their IT teacher. At that time, IT. Now, it's many more things. And we decided that the only way to do that will be if we distribute the entrepreneurial talent that is available with us to all parts of the world. And therefore, there are 650 other entrepreneurs who today contribute to that same inspiration. So it's a common inspiration that drives all of us. And that's a very important bedrock which has to be set up. The second stage is what I call aspiration. Aspiration is, within the larger inspiration, the future that the individual entrepreneur creates for himself or herself. So it could be, in the city of Cuttack, I want to make sure, and I'm using Cuttack just as a placeholder. In the city of Cuttack, I want to ensure that every school child, every mother is fully IT literate. And therefore goes about it with that kind of a focus in making sure that that happens. And of course, at the back of it is that if I add value to my client, I will get a return. And first generation entrepreneur, why did we use? Because we very soon learned in the very first 5 years, the 81 to 86, that the effort benefit ratio of training business is very different from many other businesses. The effort required is much, much higher. Even till today, there are many of us who start our day at 7 in the morning and close the day at 10 in the night when the last center has shut its shutters. Now, that kind of a commitment required 7 days a week and over millions of, or over multiple years, I think is a large commitment to make. And for what return? Everything put together, we are not even a great sum of money. The question is, the inspiration drives us. So the question is, within that aspiration, if it has to meet, then how does that inspiration become individual's aspiration so that the person continues? The third is, I call respiration. Respiration is the responsibility of the franchisor to set up processes and standards. And one of the rules that we created for ourselves was that when you walk into a center, you shouldn't be able to make out that it's a franchisee center or a company-owned center, because we have company-owned also. Because the experience should be exactly identical. For that, the recruitment rules as well as processes have to be consistent. Training has to be consistent and continuous. Systems. And more important, respiration comes when you demonstrate success to the franchisee. As a franchisor, I can give you a long, big story of why it will work for you. But if it hasn't worked for you yourself, there is very little conviction in what you're talking to others. So that becomes an important. Therefore, when we launch a new product, we launch the new product first in our own center, demonstrate success, and then carry the product on to our franchisee centers. The next stage, fourth stage, is perspiration. Perspiration is about meeting results, meeting goals. So in many ways, they are co-founders, but in many ways, they are like any other NIITian. They have goals, they have targets. That goal and target may, or not meeting that goal or target, may meet their need, but it will not meet the family's needs. And if it does not meet the family's needs, then we have a discordant note. And therefore, meeting the needs of the overall inspiring thought is an important task. Compliance. Compliance is the entry ticket to the game. If no compliance, sorry, we are no partners. Because very simply, the risk of non-compliance is far in excess of the return that non-compliance gives. And I don't know about other businesses as much, but in a training business, it's very difficult to see that next morning 200 boys and girls land up and they see a lock outside the door. That's just not done. So continuity and compliance are a very, very important aspect of our design. And obviously, you're working for customer success. How do you ensure that the quality of what you are delivering is exactly what your original design is, and that if there are deviations, that there are mechanisms which allow you to recover from there. Shadow accounting. We ensure that we keep the P&L of the franchisee as much as we look after our P&L, so that we know at any point of time how is this franchisee doing, and therefore we can take corrective action, proactive action in case it requires. The next stage, and I will have to be fast, otherwise others will not get time, is acceleration. So once you are in operation, the next stage is acceleration. What tends to happen, and this is our story, that after you have encountered success for 2 or 3 years, the enthusiasm of your franchisee may start waning, because as far as he or she is concerned, their objectives are already met. And their objectives may have been whatever those objectives were. And since most of the franchises are in small cities, their objectives. However, we need to keep a common motivating thread. And that common motivating thread is continuous acceleration. And therefore, to remain interested in the business, that common acceleration creates a very, very important motivator, common motivator for all of us. The second is co-creation. In the first stage, the products were created centrally and distributed, or were made available in a standard form. But once you have stabilized your operation and acceleration, localization of products becomes a part of this. And therefore, the franchisee, instead of just delivering a standard product, can now actually co-create products which have the same stamp of quality, but can actually deliver the local needs better than the central product could. And then in acceleration, it's a case of funding and loans, because there may be capital required for acceleration. And for that capital, what are the easier ways? So we used the syndicate of 650 franchisees, which gives us an opportunity to negotiate better with the bank, to negotiate better with the leasing agency, to negotiate better with a vendor as far as possible so that we reduce the overall cost of business for the individual. The sixth stage is appreciation. Even though the person is a co-founder, even though the person is as aligned with you as anybody else, constant appreciation is a very, very important part we learned of driving franchisees. And instead of saying you had a target of 100 and you did 90, what drives them most is two of us had a target of 100, this guy met, I did not. So the peer pressure actually is the great way, and therefore peer appreciation is a great way of driving performance. And here, nurturing a spirit of trust, openness, and mutual respect is an extremely important parameter for retaining the chemistry of the business. And we therefore have a number of performance clubs, excellence awards, model centers, and then we have actually a policy-making body where we create new policies of the company by making sure that we used to call it a CEO's council, and in the CEO's council, we get 20 franchisees to come and participate, and we listen to them on what their views are, on what the future of this business should be, and how the combined vision should work out. And the last stage is rejuvenation. Rejuvenation is an extremely important part because in the first 20 years, frankly, we did not encounter adversity at all. So everything we touched was gold, and therefore the going was very good. It is when the first adversity struck us that's the first test of the relationship was, because then there was tension. I have one piece of bread and two hungry mouths. How will we have those? That's the first time the test of our relationship came. And we all gathered together and we said, the franchisee at one stage is actually a small drop in a large ocean and can be wiped out by a wave. We, as franchisors, have a responsibility to ensure that we help this person out. But we help this person out not in a manner that it becomes an entitlement mode, because then the spirit of entrepreneurship is gone. So getting that right balance was an important part of rejuvenation. The second important part of rejuvenation is succession. Many of our franchisees have finished their innings and now they are family members or their friends or whoever else are coming. How do we create a succession plan? So we worked with them. We worked with a legal company. With a legal advisor. We worked with consultants to come out with a succession plan and came out with 2 or 3 models, and we helped them in locating their succession plan or successors, because only if they have successors will we have a continuity of business. It's as simple as that. And the last, which we normally don't talk about, is the process of termination. It is possible, even though we decided that we will remain married for life, it is possible that there is a divorce, in which case, how do we make sure that the divorce is such that both sides go home thinking, fine, it didn't work, but I still respect this person, and I still trust this person. And that, by the way, takes a lot of doing, because there are pressures from both sides, and maintaining and managing those pressures is an important part. And there, I think, as founders who stood in front of these franchisees and said, it's a good idea, come and join us, they are the ones who have to stick their neck out and resolve these issues in the larger interest of the corporation, rather than the narrow interest of either the franchisee or the particular business owner. So these are some of the lessons that we learned. But one thing is very, very clear. We are very, very proud of our business partner channel. We call them business partners because we felt that the franchisee seems to mean that there is somebody called franchisor who's a larger entity and franchisee who's a smaller entity. We said we are business partners. We would like to call you co-founders if there was a way to call them. Company law board doesn't allow that, but that's okay. So we use them. We call them as business partners. We treat them as business partners. There are times when somebody actually asked me, and a very interesting incident. I was getting out of my Maruti Zen, and there was another car pulling up in front of the hotel, of which from a 320, E320 Mercedes, came out one of my franchisees. And a friend of mine asked me, he said, are you guys sure you have the right model? Your franchisees seem to be doing better than you are doing. You still drive a Zen, and that guy is coming out of a E320 or 270, whatever that was in those days. I said, that's the success of the model. That is the success of the model, because only if he's successful can I tomorrow hope to have an E500 for myself. So with that, I will leave you to a fruitful discussion.